All right, welcome everybody to Wednesday Night Slides number 77. We're going to spend most of this show in Michigan. I was out there for the NRHS convention and did some other things while I was out there. And it was quite the trip. Me and Mike Burkhart headed out. Um, so we'll get underway here. I'm trying to find my, oh, there we go. Oops. You guys can't see what I'm doing here, but I'm trying to find a setting on my, come on. I'm under control. Don't worry. Don't mind me. That's not what I wanted. Okay. Anyhow, we'll get started. Um, so you should be seeing the title slide and away we go.
Indeed, we are.
That's what I wanted. Where'd my cursor go? I got two screens going and one cursor. So of course, there we go. Okay. The first couple of current events here. There we go. I headed out to Strasbourg on July 5th because I hadn't seen number 90 since it had gotten repainted into its current configuration. It's back to its late 80s, early 90s look right now. And with the trim on the tender, the trim under the cab window. So here we see the train at approaching Ross Grove and coming up out of the sag at Esben Shade Road. And this is at Carpenter's Crossing near the cemetery. If you have any, excuse me, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to unmute yourself, ask your question, and then remute yourself. We're very informal around here.
Nice shot, Steve.
Thank you. This is approaching Esben Shade Road. An angle is not shot very often. This is a late summer only shot. This is a new shot that just opened up. The Red Caboose Motel has put an event center in one of its barns. And as part of the event center, they put this nice pond out in front of the barn. So this is a relatively new shot you can get on the Strasbourg. And of course, now I'm plotting how I'm going to light this up when they start running night trains this Christmas. On the way home from Strasbourg, I stopped at Christiana. The old Pennsylvania Railroad Station is there. It's leased by the Lancaster chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. Two trains within a few minutes of each other. On the Harrisburg line, almost everything is push-pull. So the odds of you getting a locomotive coming your direction are 50-50 on any given train. Cab car on both trains is 25%. Getting the locomotive both ways is 25%. Of course, I got the cab car both ways on the two trains, which at this point in time is not a real bad thing. These ex-Metroliner cab cars are going to go away as soon as Amtrak figures out all the bugs they have on their the new cab cars they're making out of locomotives. That was the eastbound train. And here comes a westbound train also with one of the ex-Metroliner cab cars leading. Muffler Man, new Muffler Man for me. On the way to Picnic Rail last Saturday, I went through Oaks, Pennsylvania, and they got a Muffler Man there with the optional half-wit head. This is one I had not shot before, even though it's only 30 minutes from the house. And then also on the way to Picnic Rail, I stopped at Lyons, Pennsylvania on the old Reading Main Line and got a couple of trains. Here we see a train with Reading and Northern coal cars, hopper cars up front. Don't know why they're running coal east from Reading. Very bizarre routing for. And
Tunnel issues, what I heard.
sorry,
I heard something with tunnels is why they're rerouting those.
that could be stuff that was going to get down to Baltimore. Okay,
I think so.
yeah, and then we have a westbound auto rack train here at Lyons. And then during picnic rail, which is a big picnic right along the Reading Main Line, we were keeping an eye on one of the Harrisburg Facebook groups. The Conrail Heritage Unit on Norfolk Southern was coming east. And once it got to Sinking Spring, not far from there, much of the picnic dispersed out to the tracks to watch it go by. Okay, the big trip. Me and Mike Burkhart went out to Michigan for the NRHS convention, and we left the Philadelphia area. And we first drove north up to Scranton, Pennsylvania it was Friday, July 10th, I believe it was. And the reason we went to Scranton was because the Delaware-Lackawanna was debuting the PA that they have just finished refurbishing. The PA was repatriated, and restoration was started by Doyle McCormick, the rail preservationist out in Portland, Oregon. He was so busy with the daylight, with the Oregon Rail Heritage Foundation, all the stuff he's involved in. He wound up selling the locomotive to the Delaware-Lackawanna. Of course, Doyle's favorite railroad was always the nickel plate, so he was going to paint it as a nickel plate locomotive, even though it's former Santa Fe. So here we see the nickel plate 190 and Steamtown's own nickel plate Jeep number 514 rolling into the station. And Doyle was on hand. Here he is being interviewed by the local TV station. He got to run his PA finally. And then off we went. This was a trip for invited guests, the first run, and we did a photo run by at Toby Hanna, the Lackawanna Tower there. This is actually the backup move. And then this is the actual run by here. Helping out the PA was Delaware-Lackawanna's recently refurbished RS3M, Delaware and Hudson 4068, which looks really good, painted in D&H colors. And had a run by there at Goldsboro. And this is also at Goldsboro. And then back to Steamtown in Scranton, where we had originated with the trip. The Electric City Trolley Museum shares trackage and the platform at Steamtown. Here we see one of their Red Arrow cars coming in. And putting the PA and the RS3 away for the day. Next morning, we started off in Girard, Ohio. We drove to Girard that night, Friday night. Started off Saturday morning in Girard at the Ohio Central Engine Facility. Not much going on there. But the big target was the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic and their FPA4s. So we got to shoot a PA one day and FPA4 the next day. The FPAs and their American counterparts, the FAs, are the little brothers of the PAs. PAs with 6 axles, the FAs and FPAs with 4 axles. Here we are at the Brecksville station, Brecksville, Ohio. Other end of the train was another FPA4. This is actually going away. And down in Peninsula, Ohio. And the train ran down to North Akron. We just chased the southbound move and then broke off.
Both of them. Yeah, you were lucky that you came that weekend because the next weekend after they put the LTX leasers on it.
Oh, wow. Okay. From there, we broke off, went over to the Northern Ohio Railway Museum, which is all trolleys. Here we see a Shaker Heights car on the left and a Cleveland Rapid Transit car on the right.
Nice shot, Steve.
Thanks. And they run two trolleys, one each on the half hour. Here's the Shaker Heights car at the yard limits. And then from there, we went over to Sandusky Bay, where Norfolk Southern crosses on a long causeway and bridge combination. If you look carefully just to the left of the locomotive's nose, you'll see the roller coasters for the Cedar Point Amusement Park off in the distance. Pushing that train, this is a going away shot actually. Was one of Norfolk Southern's DC to AC conversion locomotives, which had the distinctive Maine, M-A-N-E, Maine paint scheme, horse's mane. And a few more trains went by while we were there. Fairly busy. And then over in Toledo, a friend of ours, David Patch, alerted us to a couple of moves. This CSX move, he's about to cross over a diamond with the Ann Arbor, just ahead of him. And then as soon as he was clear, this Ann Arbor train with a leased locomotive crossed over the diamond, actually going away, pushing back into, I believe it's a Canadian National Yard.
I don't think it's leased because it's a walk. Ann Arbor is owned by Waco.
That's right. Ann Arbor is owned by Waco. That's correct. We got to Adrian, Michigan before sunset and checked out the Adrian and Blissfield, which has this really, really cool paint scheme. The white with the red trim. This was on our list of things we wanted to see in action over the course of the week. I don't know why I know why that shot's there. It's not supposed to be. That was a mistake on my computer's part. Sorry about that. And then we went over to the Michigan Central, which has a collection of small locomotives in tourist train service. Next morning was the first day of the NRHS convention. We opted to chase instead of ride the train. And we started off by leaving East Lansing, driving over to Owasso, where we saw the convention train actually deadheading north. All the passengers were bused from East Lansing up to Clare to ride one way. So after poking around Owasso a little bit, we overtook the deadheading convention train up at Shepherd, Michigan. The equipment is from the Steam Railroading Institute in Owasso. They lease that precision leasing GP40 wide nose, former Mark unit. And here's a flashback. This is Shepherd back in 1995, my first visit up there, when I chased Pierre Marquette 1225 on one of its trips, when it was letter for the Polar Express. Continuing on, got the train again at Plymouth. Not Plymouth. That's the going away shot. That's the engine on the other end. Steam Railroading Institute actually owns that SW1200. And The train came into Clare on the track that runs from left to right by the tree there in the background. And then he took the switch. He's coming into the Clare station below the NRHS members here. And they're all on board now. The train backs out. Now it's going south on the old Ann Arbor. The Clare Union Depot at one point sat right there. And another flashback here. That's how Clare looked in 1995 when the depot sat at the Diamond. Train stopped here to pick up lunches, but the passengers stayed on board. And then at Shepherd, they got off the tour of the depot and they did a photo run by here. And then we continued to chase on south. And at Ithaca, everybody got off for 2 run-bys. Here we see the train, the south end of the train going by, heading south. And here's a flashback to 2009 rather, at Railfest. Same spot when 4449 did a photo run by right there in Ithaca. And then the other end of the train going north, also at the photo run by location. And then we got it going past the elevator at North Star, Michigan. And then here's a going away shot at Carland. This elevator has been used numerous times on photo charters from Pete Laro and others. Great location. Got back to Owasso. One of our targets was to get these locomotives that Great Lakes Central has recently repainted and relettered in a New York Central style scheme. They use the New York Central font down the long hood, and they've got a modified New York Central Herald on the nose. Really sharp. This is at the shops in Owasso. And these were on our target to get out on the road at some point during the week. Also in Owasso was Great Lakes Central's Heritage Unit, painted for the predecessor Tuscola and Saginaw Bay. And then not far from there is Durand with its restored Union Station. And we got a Canadian National train going by there. The next day, the NRHS went by bus from East Lansing to Coldwater. Once again, we drove. And right off the bat, they had a photo run by at the Coldwater Depot using Little River 110. It's a 462, but it is the smallest standard gauge 462 ever built. Really compact for a Pacific. The 110 led the train from Coldwater over to Quincy. And here it is arriving in Quincy. And from Quincy, Nickel Plate Road 765 took over the trip. The 110 was pulled off. The 765 was added. And folks were allowed off the train here to watch the exchange of motive power. Uh, 765 got on and away it went south. Basically south from here. Coming into Jonesboro. Actually, just out of Jonesboro, just south of it. And coming into Hillsdale. At Hillsdale, the train stopped. Everybody got off and had a taco lunch at the brew pub located in town. Here's convention chairman Mike Uhas leading the charge to lunch coming off the train. Once lunch was done, the train made a big hook to the right and headed southwest. And here it is going through the town of Reading, Michigan. Then at Montgomery, Michigan, they did 3 photo run-bys with the depot and the silo in the photo. Here's the first run-by. And the second had a little more smoke. And then the third one had a lot more smoke. Once that was done, these 2 Indiana Northeastern diesels that were on the back end of the train, they got their chance to do a photo run by going the other direction. And then the passenger stayed on. The train turned back at Montgomery. The passenger stayed on, and they returned as far as Hillsdale. Here we see the train heading back to Hillsdale, going through Reading. And then at Hillsdale, the passengers got off. They got on buses to go back to East Lansing. The train had the deadhead down to Angola, Indiana, though. So we chased it back towards Angola. Now with the diesels leading. This was a slow trip. You folks who were at the convention probably don't know this, but 765 busted a spring when it got back to Hillsdale. And they had to tow the train down to Angola at 10 miles an hour. 765 is on the far end of the train here. This is back in Reading. Fun fact, that GP30 on the point used to work for the Reading Company in Pennsylvania. So we got a Reading GP30 going through Reading, Michigan. And then back to Montgomery, where the photo run-bys had been a few hours earlier. And the injured 765 trailing the train. The trip was originally supposed to go to Ray, the excursion was. Due to time constraints, they turned back at Montgomery. This train continued on to Ray, which is right on the Indiana-Michigan border. The state line is in the center of the road we're standing on here. So technically, we're still in Michigan. The train's still in Michigan, but there's the state marker marking Indiana. And because we needed a shot in Indiana, just because we had to have a shot in Indiana, we chased it one more spot and shot the locomotives just below Ray across the state line. The next day, the NRHS went by bus to Elkhart, Indiana to tour a variety of things. We opted not to do anything with the NRHS that day. Instead, we went looking for the Great Lakes Central and chased it. Here's their freight getting ready in Owasso to head out. And leaving Owasso. Back to that elevator in Carlin. This train was going to go as far as Ithaca. But they got as far as Ashley, and they had to serve this branch line, former Grand Trunk branch line out to Middleton. And so we chased it out to Middleton, whopping 7.5 miles an hour, slow branch line. Took one car with a mount. And here it is coming into Middleton. They did some switching here, and they took a bunch of cars back with them. You can see that new Great Lakes Central, New York Central inspired logo on the side of the high rail there. And here they are leaving Middleton with their train. Once again, 7.5 miles an hour for about 10 miles. They got back to Ashley. They cut their train off, left it on the branch. Meanwhile, their train was actually still pointing north. So they're coming down now, the couple on their train to continue on their northward run. Coming down through Ashley to get onto the train again. And off they go, leaving Ashley. Passing the party store. This is back at North Star. Excuse me. You saw this elevator earlier. Unfortunately, a stupid little bush there cut down what I could do angle-wise as far as shooting the train. So this is not the best composition. And then they had to make a run over to an interchange when they got up to Ithaca. There's a big mill there, huge mill. We couldn't access that at all. We watched them switch, and then they left that mill with this one car, headed up into Ithaca to make this this drop. Let me go back one if I can. You see those three circles there on the lower right-hand corner of the photo here. They were silos. And back when I chased 1225 back in 2005, those are the three silos you see on the right edge of the photo here. Here's 1225 going south through Ithaca. Back at North Star, the standard shot. And then we'll hit the Wayback Machine again here, I think. Yes, we will. Train Festival, the daylight going past the elevators at North Star in 2009. And then approaching Ashley again. Ashley, they had to cut off their train here, go back down to the branch line, pull in, pick up what was they had left there earlier, reunite the train and head back in. Here we see them heading down to or heading back to pick up the cut of cars from Middleton. And then the whole train's together and off they go. Next day, the NRHS visited Greenfield Village, part of the Henry Ford Museum complex in Dearborn. And I'd only been here once before in a very, very quick visit. So we drove over rather than take the buses again and spent the day over here. They were using this 064 tank engine from the Calumet and Hecla Mining Company. It's a Mason bogie. The boiler is on a rigid frame. The drivers are actually articulated. They swivel underneath the boiler for sharp curves. This engine was out, this 440, under steam. So we were wondering what was going on with that next to the roundhouse there. I was really surprised how accessible most of the railroad is at Greenfield Village. Plenty of photo opportunities. When you think of Greenfield Village, you kind of like your brain tends to lump it together with other theme parks like Disney World or Cedar Point, where access to the tracks is really limited. At Greenfield Village, there's plenty of access to the railroad. It really surprised me. So a lot of good shots to be had. Here we see the old locomotive going past the new Ford assembly plant in the background there. And going by the Ackley covered bridge. This windmill shot, hard to get because between the trees on the right and the fence on the left, there's no real good opening to get the locomotive out in the clear. This is the best I could do. The locomotive you see on the right-hand side is an 060. Its tender is behind it. It's lettered for the Detroit and Mackinac, which was a tourist railroad. The locomotive itself actually operated in real life for a variety of industrial lines. This locomotive is on the to be restored list by Greenfield Village, but no timeline, no funds have been allocated. It's just on the to be restored list eventually. And number 3, going past an old gatehouse along the perimeter of the village. Crossing over Firestone Drive. Most theme parks, whenever there's a grade crossing where the tourists can come in, up in contact with the locomotive, they usually have heavy gates and guards and all kind of stuff. Nope. Greenfield Village just has this nice little crossing. This is back at the main station for Greenfield Village. And back at the Firestone Road crossing. So the buses departed at 1 o'clock with all the NRHS members. They went off to tour Michigan Central Station in downtown Detroit. A very worthwhile tour, no doubt about that. But we were just as happy to have stayed behind in Greenfield Village because that 440, they brought out onto the turntable and took it out for some test runs. Greenfield Village, they have 3 locomotives they can use, and they tend to run each one for about 30 days, then cycle the next one in. Number 7 here was next up to be cycled in after the number 3 was done with its 30-day tour. It had a hot pony truck, lead truck. So they were taken out for some test runs. And then once again, most theme park, I use that term fairly generically, most theme park railroads, you can't get anywhere near where they service the locomotives. Here you can come right up to the turntable and watch them turn it.
She just also came out a rebuild too.
Yes. So they actually put a couple of cars behind it and took it out onto the loop for a couple of laps. Oh, this was sitting over there. Unfortunately, I got interested in railroad monikers, the drawings made by railroad employees. I got interested in those way too late. A lot of them were gone by the time I got interested. You had Herbie, you had Conrail Twitty, and one of the cars here at Greenfield Village had a Bozo Texino. Used to be, thousands of these on rail cars across the country. Don't see them anymore at all. Mostly because graffiti artists have painted over the old railroad monikers. Greenfield Village has a bunch of freight cars. Don't know what they use them for. And the line is completely signaled. It's really impressive. Fully functional semaphores, searchlights, all kind of neat signals. The Smiths Creek Station was a station that was used by Thomas Edison at one time on his daily travels. I forget exactly where it was located originally, but Greenfield Village dismantled it brick by brick, moved it to Dearborn, and reassembled it brick by brick. And once again, here's their water tank and coaling tower. And most theme park railroads, you can't get anywhere near where they service the trains. Here, they're dumping the ash. You can go right up to them and watch them do it. was pretty stunned. You could just like stand right in the middle of their main servicing area and take photos. We finished at Greenfield Village, back over to the Adrian and Blissfield. We had packed a ton of night photo gear, but then discovered when we got out there that the sunset in Michigan at about 9:30, didn't get dark to about 10. So night photos, we only did it for one night. That was just one night here on the at Adrian on the Adrian and Blissfield. Next morning we were in Adrian and we wanted to get the Adrian and Blissfield out on the road with their cool white and red engines. The rumor was they would be working around Adrian and then maybe going over to Blissfield. So we chased them around Adrian for a little bit. Unfortunately, the run to Blissfield never materialized. This turned out to be a pretty short day. Cool paint scheme, though. We went back over to the Central Michigan Central Michigan, I think it is, with their critters. Got a couple of shots there. The sun was out. Then over to Allen Park near Detroit. When Henry Ford built his auto plant, he built the Detroit, Toledo, and Ironton Railroad to serve it. And he electrified the railroad. And the wires were hung from these concrete arches. The electrification didn't last very long, but the arches were built to last, and they're still there. So here we see a Canadian National train coming up underneath the Ford arches. Next morning, we caught a CSX train first thing in the morning. But our main target was Great Lakes Central again. We had good intel that a train was coming down to near Ann Arbor to interchange. And when it went back north again, it would have one of the New York Central inspired locomotives leasing. So here it comes in heading south to the interchange point. And there's our target. But it's good looking paint scheme. So it did it switching, a lot of switching. They were here shuffling cars back and forth for probably a little more than 2 hours. Finally on the road, we chased them a little bit northwest, fighting the sun the entire way. It was still the morning. But cool looking paint scheme. And then we went over to the Huckleberry Railroad, Crossroads Village, near Flint. And while this railroad is part of Crossroads Village, which is kind of like Greenfield Village, but a much, much smaller scale, the railroad actually leaves the village and runs for a few miles on regular right-of-way outside of the village. So you can chase it fairly easily. Ex-Alaska Railroad narrow gauge 460, 3-foot gauge.
Hey, Steve, is the 464 run there or is it down right now?
It is down as far as I know right now.
Waiting on grants for rebuild.
And then we went over to Lapeer for the Lapeer Industrial Railroad. They got this tonner that they use once in a blue moon. Not a very big railroad. And then we went into Canada. We went across southern Ontario to get home. And we stopped at Port Stanley for the Port Stanley terminal, which is now mostly a tourist railroad, but once again, they got a lot of small locomotives sitting around. And then we stopped off at the Ontario Southland in Salford, Ontario. And the only thing that was out and shootable was this former Toronto, Hamilton, and Buffalo switcher. Next morning, we started off in Kitchener, the Ion Light Rail. A lot of folks don't realize Kitchener is big enough to have a light rail system, but they do. And even first thing on a Saturday morning, they had riders on board. I was a little surprised. I thought we'd see a lot of empty trains go by. From there, it was over to St. Jacobs and the Waterloo Central. They run some cool stuff. The GMD1, Canadian National GMD1 on the right, was supposed to be on the train that day, but the day before, the railroad, for some reason, changed its mind and put the former Canadian Pacific SW1200 on the train. Waterloo Central paints their stuff in the colors of the original railroad, but letters it all Waterloo Central. Couple of Alco S13s, I believe. MLW S13s. There's the GMD1. I really wanted to see that out and running, but was not to be. Then we chased one of their trips. They run over quite a bit of trackage, but 10 miles an hour. They're not a fast railroad. Most of the traffic comes from this huge farmers market on the south end of the line. The area around St. Jacobs is settled by Amish. And here we see the train crossing over the Conestoga River at St. Jacobs. And this Conestoga River was named after the Conestoga River that runs through Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They took the name with them, the Amish did, when they moved from Pennsylvania Dutch country up to Ontario. Here's their Christmas caboose. St. Jacob Station is located just north of the shop. This horse would not cooperate. I had him all posed really nice. And then when the train showed up, kind of wandered off on his own. Stupid horse. And then from there, we went over to the Halton County Radial Railway, which runs, which was a large trolley museum outside of Toronto. Mostly TTC, Toronto Transit Commission equipment there, including the PCC. And of course, my favorite, I love the CLRVs, the Canadian Light Rail Vehicles. Hard to believe I'm shooting them in museums now. And a Peter Witt car. And had the snowplow out as well. Even though we're in July, not much snow. So there's the CLRV and the snowplow. I rode the CLRVs when they were brand new back in 1980 up in Toronto. Hard to believe they're in museums now, but they're my favorite of the modern era, and I use modern in quotes, modern era streetcars. And what sets these off from all the other modern era streetcars is the CLRVs have a headlight in the center, just like a trolley car should. Nice little museum, really, really well done. And then we stopped at St. Catharines. Amtrak's Maple Leaf was due in. I wanted to get a shot that showed it was Amtrak in Canada. So I wandered down the platform and got the Via sign in the photo as well. And then the train had a pretty lengthy station stop here for some reason. So I ran down the other end of the platform and got this father and son shooting the train with their video cameras, their phones. Next morning, we crossed back into the States that night. And next morning, we're near Lyons, New York, on the old New York Central for CSX and Amtrak. $334 from Grand Central Terminal in New York City. But we went over to Geneva. Finger Lakes Railway was running excursions, and we wanted to shoot those. So they ran this pull style locomotive on both ends. From Geneva, it's an hour and a half trip. They run 45 minutes. When they get to 45 minutes, they stop and change ends and go back. Now, you would think, being in the Finger Lakes region, the line would be super scenic. This is about as scenic as it got. It's not a very scenic railroad. Nice cars, but the house is kind of there. That box with a flag on it, on the platform of the locomotive, that's for remote control. A lot of Finger Lakes locomotives are set up for remote control now. This is at the turnaround point, and the guy on the right-hand side is the engineer. He just got off the locomotive that's at the back of the train and is now walking up to this end to get on the locomotive to head back to Geneva. The equipment is from the United Railroad Historical Society of New Jersey. The car right behind the locomotive is the famous observation car, Hickory Creek, which has been used a lot on Amtrak runs from New York up to Albany. But due to tunnel work on the East River tunnels in New York, they can't run those excursions this year. So Hickory Creek and some of its other stable mates are up on the Finger Lakes for their trips. Another one of their GEs with the remote control box out on the front. Then we stopped off in Cortland, New York, looking for Susquehanna. All we found there was these two CSX locomotives. We got in the car just about ready to leave and heard horns, jumped out of the car, and Susquehanna light engine move was coming into town. You can see the old watchtower for the crossing in the background there. Other end, parked in front of the Cortland station. And then down to Binghamton, we found Susquehanna's Heritage Unit painted in their 1960s silver with maroon trim. And then back into Scranton. Late afternoon light, looking for the D&H locomotive. And it was sitting there. So even though it wasn't planned that way, but somehow the trip started and ended at the same point in Scranton. So that was the big trip. We're gonna finish off with a few scenes here. I had been up in that area before, and one of the times I was up there was for an excursion, a charter, using Little River 110, the small Pacific, on a photo freight. This was in 2007, and it poured rain, just poured rain all day long. We started off in Coldwater, and we had this box car, flat car, and caboose. The box car could not leave Coldwater. They just had on for a few run-bys there. Here we are in the pouring rain in Jonesboro. Also in Jonesboro. And I didn't realize how far we went with this until I started looking at maps just a couple days ago. We actually took this engine all the way down to Montgomery, which surprised me. Here it is at Jonesboro again, just below Jonesboro. Same tree I had shot 765 under just a couple weeks ago. Here we come into Quincy. This is where the 110 and 765 exchanged trains a couple weeks ago. Pouring rain, just wet and muddy. This is probably the wettest charter I've ever been on. There were 3 charters I've been on that have been absolute soakers. This is probably the tops of them. The second wettest was probably Pete Laro's charter on the Valley Railroad several years ago. And the third wettest was probably the Drowned Rat trip down in Chattanooga at the Tennessee Valley Railway Museum. The TVRM one, though, didn't rain all day. We actually had a let up of rain at one point. And this is at Hillsboro. And that wraps up the show for this week. The next program will be on August 27th. In between now and then, I will be going to Summer Rail in Cincinnati. Not Cincinnati, it's not there anymore. Marion, Ohio. I'll have some stuff from Summer Rail to show as well. So I want to end this program here for the folks watching on YouTube on the replay. Give me